Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Deshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Courtney. Okay, devotees. Here we are now on verse 8. Verse 8. Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtana nu smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtan vraje tadanuragi jananugami kalam nayed akilam it upadesha saram. Beautiful, beautiful. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Goloka Vrindavan, Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees, who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Yes, so now we're going on to a higher level of Krishna consciousness. Yes, it's definitely a higher level of Krishna consciousness. And, well, there's a couple of points before we start going through the different paragraphs. We'll make a couple of general points, about the verse itself. So the first point, I mentioned really, is that this is describing more elevated levels of Krishna consciousness than ours. And of course it's good to understand these things, but we should be careful not to think that these things may apply to us just, they're readily accessible. They can be accessible in due course as one progresses in devotional service. In fact, they will, if one perseveres nicely. But right now, we don't want to start imagining that I am something more than what I am. Better to stay very humble and dependent on Krishna, Prabhupada, the spiritual master, and the devotees. And not worry too much about these things. Okay, so that's a point. And as an example, it's clear, isn't it? As an example, Srila Rupa Goswami says, one should reside in Vraja, Goloka Vrindavan. That's that one, the big one up there. It's not the one that you can go to on Emirates or Qatar or whatever it is, some airline. No. It's that one up there, Goloka Vrindavan. So, one should reside in Goloka Vrindavan. Well, that's nice. That's wonderful. A wonderful idea. But it's not, we are not ready, put it that way. And we should not imagine that we are, because if we do, it'll be detrimental for us. All right, so let's see. Yes, so a related point is that one may not be able to reside in Vrindavan, particularly Goloka Vrindavan. One might not even be able to reside in what we call Boma Vrindavan, this earthly Vrindavan that you can reach on Emirates and etc. Yeah, I mean, there's more to it than Emirates, but it can be reached by people like us. It's not difficult. Yeah, so we may not be able to live physically in either of the Vrindavans, but at least we can live there in our minds. In our minds. And that we should try to do. We should remember Krishna, his pastimes, his qualities, his instructions, Bhagavad Gita. We should learn verses from Bhagavad Gita and then remember them. Then we're remembering Krishna, and Krishna is only in Vrindavan. As Krishna says, Vrindavanam parityaja ekapadam na gacchati. I never go even ekapadam, even one step out of Vrindavan. So if you're remembering Krishna nicely, you're with him and you're in Vrindavan. But on a practical level for us, the verse is encouraging us to always chant and remember the Lord's name, form, qualities, pastimes, all these types of things. So, well, just an interesting point in that regard, because the verse itself and in the purport, I think it's perhaps in a couple of places in the purport, it's mentioned we should chant about and remember the Lord's name, form, qualities, and pastimes. These four, in that order. In other words, through the name or names, you can realize the form or forms. Through the names and the forms, you can realize the qualities. And through the names, forms, and qualities, you can realize the pastimes. This is how it works. We could say, well, maybe we'll say more as we go along about that. But as I say, it does come up here and there in this purport. Yes, so, well, then right at the end of the verse, the last sentence is, one should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. So who are these devotees? Well, of course, Prabhupada is included. Prabhupada is definitely included. One might remember one's spiritual master. But even more particularly, as we'll see as we go through the purport, he's indicating like the original bridge buses from up there, from Goloka. Radharani, her Sakhis, her Manjaris, the cowherd boys, the Nanda and Yashoda, these types of people. Follow in their footsteps. Why? In order to learn how to serve in ways similar to how they serve there in Goloka Vrindavan. All right, so now let's go on to the paragraphs, to the purport, and I have, it seems to me, I mean, it seems like a reasonable sort of way to do it, to me, is I have divided the purport into two sections. One is, well, I initially called it introduction until I saw it was half of the purport. So it's not really introducing the purport, it's just half the purport. But it's more like, what would you say? Well, it is an introduction, sort of like introductory notes for deeper levels of Krishna consciousness. And it's paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. They're more than anything introducing what in 4, 5, and 6 he's really going to give us something which is, anyway, you'll see, it's pretty mind expanding. So, right then, the first paragraph, and Srila Prabhupada, there's an important point that runs, it's there in the verse, and it runs through the purport, that in order to make really substantial progress, training is required. And in this particular regard, at least particularly in the first paragraph of the purport, one has to train one's mind. You know, we have mentioned before how in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, your mind can be your friend or your enemy. When you're on our levels, the mind is generally more prone to be a bit like an enemy than a friend. That's not an absolute statement, but I think you understand what I mean. The mind, in the earlier days of Krishna consciousness, the mind is quite talkative. Many suggestions and ideas. So we have to train the mind. In fact, there's a verse in the Bhagavatam which says, the mind is like a wild animal. You may keep a grip on it, but as soon as you let go of your grip, it just goes, just like that. It doesn't ask. Yeah, so the mind needs to be trained. What does it mean, trained? Well, it means a few things. We have to learn knowledge, study the books, in other words, become educated to understand what is what and what is happening in this situation and what's happening to me in that situation. That sort of training is required. And training in the sense of, maybe forcing, but forcing is a bit of a negative term, but pushing the mind a bit to, for example, chant attentively instead of chanting and, the chanting becomes a background noise because the mind is off here and there, and that's where our consciousness is really focused. So Prabhupada says one has to train the mind to become his friend. And this Krishna consciousness movement is especially for that training. You know, I'll tell you completely frankly, and it's just such a fact, that you will not find training in Krishna consciousness, which is, I don't know, 1/10 of what you get. You'll not find training in Krishna consciousness outside of ISKCON, which is practically 1/10 of the training you'll get in ISKCON. It's amazing. Is it working?
No, it's off now.
Is it on?
No. It's on, yeah, but it's actually
1 second.
blank on the screen.
Is it still blank?
And now it's...
Something's there? Oh, Krishna. Anyway, it's okay. Sorry. And Prabhupada, no, see, you don't start it like that. You start it with the red button, right? Just one time's enough. Oh my God. Anyway, it's okay. So we continue. Well, no, just give it to me. Just give it to me. Excuse me. So it's on there. So we turn it off. And we turn it on. It's on. It is definitely on. Oops, no, that wasn't it. No, anyway, we can't do it. We can't do it. It's on video. Anyway, it's okay. I'm sorry about that. We're trying to set up another camera, but I would have to take time out to get it working. Okay, so here we are then. And we're still in the first paragraph. And Srila Prabhupada makes the point that, the mind, it's not simple. It's not simple. The mind has been conditioned for many lifetimes, and there are all sorts of impressions and things built up in the mind. And if you're not careful, Prabhupada makes the point, if you're not careful, the mind can be very dangerous, because sometime it may just come up with something from a previous lifetime, which is just sort of way out there somewhere. And, you'll be, particularly if it's the time of death, you're going to be in very serious trouble. So, yes, so the mind desperately needs to be trained, and in order to sort of drive the point home even more strongly, Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 verse 6. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajat yante kalevaram. Whatever state of being you remember at the time of death, you'll attain to that state without fail. Aha. Now, you know what? I have to take a break for a minute. I'm so sorry. Don't go away. I have to use the bathroom. Oi, 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 oi. Okay, sorry, but we're back again. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Right-ho, so now we go on to paragraph 2, the second paragraph. And Prabhupada's sort of, he's continuing, at least partly, well, he is continuing the same theme. This is more introductory to the actual, the main subject which is going to come up in due course in the purport here. So, yeah, Prabhupada, Prabhupada makes the point that if the mind suddenly thinks of something which is not congenial, just the mind just at the wrong time, at the time of death, the mind just goes off, then, what an effect it can have on your future. You'll take birth in terms of whatever it was that your mind went off onto. It generally doesn't really happen like that, that the mind may just suddenly go off. It can, but generally what you'll think of at the time of death is whatever you've been focused on during the course of your life. Yeah, it's like a continuum through your life, and it culminates at the time of death. But anyway, the point is, though, that in order to really have the best possible future, and particularly to go back to Godhead, then we have to train our mind and get ourselves as focused as we can. And if possible, we're still in the second paragraph, if possible, live in Vrindavan, if possible. Otherwise, live in Vrindavan in the mind. That's definitely much more practical. For myself, I have this idea. I've lived in Vrindavan before, not for long, like for 3 months. I've lived there on a few occasions. My perspective is, Vrindavan is a nice place to visit, but not so suitable for living. The weather is a bit extreme. The weather's a bit extreme. And plus we have our mission. We have our service to spread Krishna consciousness. But anyway, Prabhupada introduces the idea that we should live in Vrindavan, like I said, at least within our minds. And Prabhupada says, take shelter of an advanced devotee there. So, advanced devotee, well, we have Prabhupada, etc., like I said. We can take shelter of them. But there's another idea which is coming out now. There's another idea taking this whole point further. And in order to bring this out, Prabhupada quotes Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. A devotee should always reside in the transcendental realm of Vraja. He means Vrindavan on this planet. Devotees should always reside in the transcendental realm of Vraja and always engage in Krishnam, well, it's in the Sanskrit of the verse, Krishnam smaran janam chasya preshtam, the remembrance of Sri Krishna and his beloved associates. by following in the footsteps of such associates and by entering under their eternal guidance, one can acquire an intense desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yes. So, remember, Krishna and his beloved associates means the Brijbasis. We can say it includes Prabhupada, but there's a specific sense more than anything that it's meaning the Brijbasis. And then if we follow in the footsteps of the Brijbasis and enter under their guidance, then you'll develop an intense desire to serve the Lord. Yeah. So what does this mean? Well, I think in order to make it clear, we should we'll go through verse 3, paragraph 3. So this is now taking the same point a step further. The idea of living in Vrindavan and taking guidance from an associate. In the transcendental realm, it's the next verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In the transcendental realm of Vraja, one should serve the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associates. And one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna and should follow in his footsteps. This method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana, of spiritual practice, while still in the conditioned state, and in the stage of sadhya, perfection, God realization, when one is a spiritually perfect person. So what this is really referring to, this is something we haven't come across yet in Nectar of Instruction. This is actually referring to a type of advanced practice of sadhana bhakti, which is called Raganuga sadhana bhakti. It's still sadhana, it's still practice. You're not perfect. You're not on that level. You're practicing. But you are practicing, the term is Rag Anuga. Rag means spontaneous attraction, so powerful that there's no conception of, what would you say? There's no conception of rules and regulations, not that one would neglect them, because on that level one would spontaneously follow the rules and regulations. But there's no formality. It's just a matter of Krishna. I want to serve Krishna. Rag means an overpowering attraction to serving Krishna. And that rag is possessed by the devotees of Vrindavan who have been mentioned one or couple of times in these couple of verses here that we've just been looking at. They have rag. They have an attraction and love for Krishna, which doesn't depend on him being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's just because he's Krishna, and he's so wonderful, and he's my friend, or he's my lover, or maybe he's not exactly my son perhaps, but my nephew, my younger relative like that. This is what rag means. They overlook the position of Krishna. In fact, if you tell them that, Krishna's God, the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they'll say, him, God? No, he's not God. He's a cowherd boy. They overlook that because their attraction to Krishna is so extremely strong that it just totally, obfuscates is a difficult word, but it completely closes off awareness of anything else to do with Krishna other than the relationship that you have. Means conjugal love, parental relationship, friendly relationship. One generally only sees Krishna in terms of the relationship, and not that he's the Supreme Lord and all these types of considerations. But in order to come to that, that's rag. But the term is rag anuga. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, they have rag. They have it already. Here we're talking about someone who wants to have it, or has some attraction at least to having it. So anuga means to follow. Like we are Prabhupada anugas. We're followers of Prabhupada. Sometimes we say we are Rup anugas. We're followers of Rupa Goswami. But this is rag anuga, means we're following those who have rag. And we are following the rag of those who have rag. Is it understandable so far? What do you say, Mahaprabhu, Kripa Prabhu? It's understandable? I hope we haven't lost anyone, somewhere. So now, the process, in other words, we're talking here about realizing one's eternal relationship with Krishna in Vrindavan, in Goloka Vrindavan. And in order to enter into that from our position in this world as practicing devotees, imperfect devotees, we have to follow someone or ones of the devotees of Vrindavan who are already in that position. And by following them, and not just following them, but in the translation of the second of these two verses here, the verse in paragraph 3, the way Prabhupada translates it, one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna and follow in his footsteps. This is a very subtle subject. What it means is that if your eternal relationship with Krishna is in Vrindavan, not in Vaikuntha, in Vrindavan, then as you're practicing and practicing and practicing, as we're trying to do, but I think more than what we've done so far, as you're practicing and practicing, then gradually an awareness arises, a revelation by the mercy of Krishna. What is your eternal relationship with Krishna? That it's like this or it's like that. We did mention that in, I think it's Narada Bhakti Sutras, Prabhupada says that on the level of asakti, which is the last stage before bhava, which is the first part of perfection, that on the level of asakti, one at least becomes aware, what is my eternal relationship with Krishna? But then you've got to get ready, get trained up, so you know how to enter into it and do it when you go there. Therefore, under the guidance, even though your spiritual master is there, but under his guidance and under the guidance internally of a resident of Vrindavan, you learn who is situated in the same type of relationship which you have. Then you learn how to enter into that relationship. I hope it's making sense. Therefore, it's called Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. It's a sadhana. It's a practice. Something you have to work on. So, therefore, I wanted to refer to a song by Narottam Das Thakur, which you're probably aware of, but I don't know if you're aware of what the real connotations, the underlying meaning of the song is. So, yes, this is the song Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. Rupa Manjari is, well, Rupa Goswami, who's in Chaitanya Leela, is Rupa Manjari in Krishna Leela, in Goloka Vrindavan. And if one has an eternal relationship with Krishna as a gopi, then very often one will be placed under the supervision of Rupa Manjari, even while still in this world, because Narottam Das Thakur wrote this song while he was definitely still in this world. But there's a type of communication with that person in the spiritual world who then gives you guidance, along with your spiritual master, how to develop that sort of relationship with Krishna, what services to do. It all goes on internally. Externally, one carries on as normal, chanting one's rounds, etc. But internally, there's a type of meditation and communication with that eternal associate. So in the case of Narottam Das Thakur, his spiritual master is Lokanath Goswami. You know, we sing every day in the Guru Vandana, Sri Guru Charana Padma, that song, the Guru Puja song. We sing just towards the end, not almost at the end. He sings that Lokanath Lokera Jivana, that Lokanath Goswami is the life of all people, and particularly himself. Yeah. So he has a spiritual master, and spiritual master is still there. But now he's also taking direction from Rupa Manjari, and there's a type of connection. So therefore the song says, I'm going to read the translation. The lotus feet of Sri Rupa Manjari are my treasure, my devotional service, and my object of worship. They give my life meaning, and they are the life of my life. They are the perfection of rasa, and they are a perfection worthy of attainment. They are the very law of the Vedic scriptures for me. They are the meaning of all my fasts and penances and my chanting of japa. They are the basis of my religion and activities. By the purifying process of favorable devotional service, I will attain perfection, and with these two eyes be able to see. Doesn't mean he's got a sight problem. It means he'll be able to see transcendentally and see Rupa Manjari and see Radha and Krishna. So I will attain perfection, and with these two eyes be able to see. Her transcendental form is shining like moonlight in my heart, and my heart therefore shines and reciprocates. Her absence from my vision is like a dose of strong poison, and I will suffer till the end of my life. Narottam Das Thakur says, please give me your mercy and the shade of your lotus feet. So his relationship with Rupa Manjari does not contradict his relationship with Lokanath Goswami, which was a very deep relationship. He was the only disciple. Yeah, so, but it's going on like that. It's going on like that. And under Rupa Manjari specifically, he's learning how to render conjugal service in Goloka Vrindavan. Aha. So anyway, for us, let's come back down to planet Earth and let's face the realities of our shortcomings, or shall we just say, face the reality of who and what we really are, in fact. We are not on this level, but you're being informed of this just so you have an idea of what these things are about. So it's like that. Yeah. And Srila Prabhupada, he did not at all appreciate. He did not at all appreciate when disciples of his wanted to go and live at Radhakund. He didn't appreciate it. And get into that whole, very Radhe, 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 that whole thing with that sort of focus, Prabhupada didn't appreciate. I remember when I first went to India, I first went to Vrindavan in 1976. There was an American boy named Richard who was living at Radhakund. But Prabhupada had told him, don't live at Radhakund, you'll become a monkey. But he carried on living in Radhakund. So it's really just for, most of the other things we have been discussing over the last 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it may have been, has been just very practical, and we can apply a lot of it for ourselves. But here we're into a subject, and as we go on further, you'll see that it's a subject that we're not ready for at this point. So therefore we don't need to worry about it. We don't need to worry about it. We should just worry about chanting without offenses and following the regulative principles to the point even our mind does not contemplate doing those things. So now where are we? Are we in paragraph 3? Yeah, we're in paragraph 3. Srila Bhakti, no. What is it? Oh, we're still there. We're still there in the second, with the second of the 2 verses of Rupa Goswami's from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Yeah, you know what? I think what I'll do now, I'll stop at this point, and we'll continue tomorrow. We'll let you try to digest a bit of this so far, because you may find it gives you a bit of heartburn or something, some transcendental indigestion. But for the sake of information, and because it's all part of Nectar of Instruction, of course, we have to repeat it. Is that okay? Yeah, Mahaprabhu, Kripa Prabhu. All right, devotees. So, see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. If you've got Nectar of Instruction, read through verse 8 and its purport. And that'll prepare you a little bit more for what we're going to discuss tomorrow. Okay, for the time being though, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki.